Hey folks, welcome back. So today we're going to do something just a little bit different. I'm going to show you how I'm using some of my garden produce in the kitchen. And we're going to show you my lunch. Now today is July 11th, but what we're going to do is show you tomorrow the lunch, but today actually starts the process. And let me explain. So in storage from my harvest last year, we still have sweet potatoes, and this year we now have potatoes. And every evening I go ahead and select an assortment. I throw them on the kitchen scale, and typically I'm targeting somewhere about 650 grams in raw total weight. And tomorrow morning I'm going to go ahead and dice these up into cubes completely unseasoned, and then I'm going to toss them into our air fryer. Now, once they're in there, I set it for 18 minutes, no preheat, and I let it run all the way through. And I actually leave it plugged in. Actually, take that. I unplug it after it's done, but I don't take it out when it's done. I'm having my breakfast during that time, and it kind of allows them to cool a bit. And then I go ahead and I throw them on the kitchen scale. And the reason I do this is because I want to know what my total cooked weight is. It's usually about 40% less than what the raw weight started at. And then I take that and I divide it into two portions. One portion goes into that 10-cup mixing bowl. That's actually what I eat my salad out of. And what I'll do is I will get the total weight, and then I'll usually portion about 150 grams of the cooked weight in for my following day's breakfast, reserving the remainder for my salad, which usually runs between somewhere in 200 and 250 grams. But that's actually the caloric base of my lunch salad. And the other big heavy calorie hitter is a serving of walnuts that goes in there as well. But with that, we're going to go ahead and close this out tonight, and we're going to pick this back up tomorrow so we can actually see what the process is and what the final product is. So stay tuned. Okay folks, so it's the next morning and we're going to get these things in the air fryer. Now this is a pretty simple process for me. I just top and tail each of my sweet potatoes, and then I cut them into relatively similar sized pieces. Compost bucket over there. Even if something doesn't need to necessarily be composted, I call it a compost donation. Like for example, these little end pieces here, I've eaten them in the past, but I figure if I can give a little bit back to the soil each time I cook something, that's never a bad thing. And as far as my piece size go, I don't really go for ultra uniform. I just try to get relatively close, and that's it. Into the air fryer they go. And for the red potatoes, since these are relatively small, cubed, good to go. And these guys, I just kind of use my judgment as far as what size I'm going for. And that's it. You get them all chopped up, get them in the air fryer, get them cooking. Like I said yesterday, they finish in the air fryer. I leave them in there until they finish cooking in there. They get cool-ish. Then they get dumped in the bowl. And once they get dumped in the bowl, and I finish breakfast, then I usually chop up something for the salad, and everything goes in the fridge at that point, chopped up, most of it ready to go, except anything too watery. So let me go ahead and finish this process, and we will pick it up with the other vegetables that are going to go in later. Okay folks, so we've got our potatoes and our sweet potatoes, and the reason I weigh and measure everything out is just because I know kind of how my body feels and operates, and it's a way for me to keep everything in check, both from an undereating and an overeating standpoint. I don't want to undereat something that I'm going to leave myself wanting energy when I'm outside, and I don't really want to overeat either because, well, if I eat through my potatoes and sweet potatoes too fast, that means I don't have any left to eat the next day. So it's just kind of like I said, a good way to keep things balanced. We've got raw garlic, raw carrot, raw beet, all from the garden. These are going to get chopped up now, put into the bowl, and then the bowl is going to go into the fridge, and it's going to cool for the next, what time is it, 8:40? 3-4 hours. and then it's going to be lunchtime. Lunch is usually preceded by a cup of coffee, and then we'll add the rest of the stuff to the salad. But right now I wanted to show kind of everything that's from the garden, and this is it, with the exception of bell pepper will go in later along with tomato, but I don't want to cut them up right now because they're a little too damp to sit on this for the next 4 hours, so they get added in later. If you're a grower and you grow things in a reasonable sized quantity, what you're going to find very quickly is that you're going to have a ton to harvest in a relatively short period of time. And when it comes to prep, 3 tools I highly recommend. A very sharp knife. I invested in this last November and it made all the difference for me. I really thought my previous knife was just a little dull. No, it was butter knife dull. This thing has made all the difference. Took a ton of stress off my wrist and my shoulder and my elbow when chopping for long periods of time. And the other tool I recommend to save the blade, a bench scraper, pastry scraper, whatever you want to call them, to pick this, to pick the actual vegetables up and move them, because I see a lot of people dragging their knife blade across the cutting board. And now I'm not a knife expert, but I can't imagine that that's good for the blade long term, or even short term, kind of taking the edge off. And there we are. That's all chopped up. Goes into the bowl. And it hits the fridge for, like I said, the next 4 hours or so. So what's that? About half full already? Yeah, it's a big salad. Okay, folks, so we are back because I am hungry. Still drinking my coffee, but it's time to eat. Still got our bowl that came out of the fridge. Everything is nice and cool at this point. And the rest of what we got here is focusing on what came out of the garden first, my garden. I've got a bell pepper, not in great, it was a little immature, but I wanted to pull him early off the plant just so the plant has more inspiration to push more fruit out. Got a few San Marzano tomatoes, determinate. I don't have any other tomatoes going in the garden right now. Not the best for fresh eating necessarily, but they'll serve the purpose just fine. I'd prefer cherry tomatoes, but I just don't have any at the moment. Not sure if I'm gonna get any this season. I didn't really do much in the way of planting, but I do have a volunteer that's doing something. But yeah, we're gonna get these things cut up into the bowl. And these, honestly, I don't even bother snipping that little tip off. It's just nothing that bothers me. Same reason that I probably don't cut my garlic, the butt end of my garlic off either. I just throw that in as is. Doesn't, a more pronounced stem tip right there where the stem meets the tomato, I would probably take that off, of course. And then we've got our pepper, but we also, of course, before we get too far, want to have our compost bucket in reserve for that. And then we just cut around. You know, so I got a questionable spot there. Chickens will love that. And then just start the chopping process. All right, so we're getting even more full. This is almost all that I have going in from the garden. So what we've got, I think we've got, what, 7 plants from the garden in this bowl so far? So yeah, not bad representation. And finally, this is actually fermented beet. So not an additional plant per se, but a similar plant, just in a different variety, in a different form. I ferment as much as I can. Right now, beets I have coming out of the garden in huge quantity. I can ferment those and or carrots, I do that. And when the habaneros start coming in really full force, I'll be doing a whole lot of fermented hot sauce, but that will not be part of this because I don't like spicy in my cold salads. It's just not something I prefer. So that goes right on top, 1/4 cup. And now what I also have from someone else's garden, cucumber. And this whole thing will go in there. How do I want to cut this one up? Probably give or take in thirds. I'm not really picky with how it goes in there, but before I actually get too far into this one, we're gonna go ahead and take a bite. I've had cucumbers before that. That's fine. Catch me by surprise with a real bitterness about them. So before I ruin my whole salad by throwing a nasty cucumber in there, we're gonna go ahead and give it a little bit of a taste test. For anybody growing cucumbers, I highly recommend that because I've been caught flat-footed a few times pulling cucumbers out of the garden that looked great, but for some reason were super bitter. And usually it's when the plant has a bit more age and or it has been really stressed out by cultural conditions like excess heat, too much water, not enough water, things like that can really get a plant pretty unhappy. So yeah, getting pretty full here. And coming down to the wire of what we got going in here. So this is a tablespoon of nutritional yeast, tablespoon of texture vegetable protein. It's a defatted soy, and I like it just because it has a bit of a crunch to it. And then walnuts, but these, that's an ounce. I'm gonna go ahead and do a rough chop on them just so that they spread a little further through the salad. And there you go, folks. That is everything that goes into the salad except for the dressing. Now, when I dress my salad, I do not like to spray it straight on with the powders on top, so I go ahead and give it a good mix before. And this is this is one of the reasons I actually sometimes make this in a bigger mixing bowl, because it gets really dicey right now with respect to, is this going to go everywhere as I'm gently folding it over itself. Now, what I do for my dressing, follow me here on this one. I've got, so we use Dijon mustard in the house from Aldi. Dijon mustard is one of the ingredients in my homemade salad dressing. So what happens is, when you get to the bottom of a Dijon mustard like this, it's really hard to get the remnants out. So I open up the bottle, I throw in, a few squirts of extra virgin olive oil, some apple cider vinegar, some balsamic vinegar, shake it on up, and I use that as a salad dressing. And I will keep doing that over and over. Now, in parallel, we'll have another bottle of this fresh in the fridge. So I'll, again, fire some new Dijon into this old bottle, add the other things in there, keep shaking it up until the new bottle winds up where I can't get any more out of it, and that becomes a new salad dressing bottle. This one gets recycled, and move on. And I like a relatively damp salad, so we're gonna use almost all of that. There's still some left for tomorrow, but I'll probably top that off. And that's it. That's my daily lunch salad today. Pretty much runs the same way every day. Historically, I always had bigger servings of legumes, like a big old serving of chickpea, but I've kind of swapped that out because with all of the potato and sweet potato I've got in the house, to make sure that they get used up, I just punt on the chickpea for this salad. I get legumes on the front and back side of the day with breakfast and dinner, so to not have it in my lunch meal. And I do get a little bit with the textured vegetable protein. That represents, that's soy based, so it is a legume representation, but not a full serving. But I don't mind because I think this is keeping me running just fine. And that's how I use some of my produce from the garden in my daily salad. Now, I also use obviously some of my breakfast and my dinner, but this is a pretty good representation of what I've got coming out of the garden right now and what goes into the actual salad. Outside of that, primarily what I'm using, hot peppers in my breakfast. Some of these same pieces go in my breakfast as well. And then also berries. I blend 150 grams of berries in water in my bullet blender every morning as sort of a smoothie to have with breakfast. But yeah, that's how the garden supports my my dietary pattern. So I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. If you did, feel free to give the video a like, and if you have any questions, please feel free to post below. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.